What's going on YouTube, and welcome into another video here on the channel. I am LiboATM here with another weekly discussion, which is no longer a 3-minute discussion, because as people tend to point out to me, I tend to ramble and rant and go over 3 minutes every week, so there's no point in calling it 3 minutes if I'm going to rant for 5. So it's now the weekly discussion so that I stop annoying people. So basically what I do on these videos is I talk about a hot topic, a hot take, something new to Dead by Daylight, break it down and give my opinions on it, and then talk about whether I think it's good or bad for the game in general. This week's topic is going to look at playstyles, specifically killer playstyles, and I will tackle the survivor ones in a subsequent video. But basically this is how people play the game, the tactics they use, the strategies they use, and then how that affects not only the game itself, but then how it affects the other side, and how it affects them in the long run. So I'll try and break all that down with this being as minimal ranty as possible, and then we can discuss whether or not it's good or bad for the game on the whole, and then any sort of possible suggestions on how to make it better. Yeah, so that's the plan, guys. So it's probably going to end up being a little bit of a long one, so I'll jump into it just now and we can get started. Right, killer playstyles. So let's try and break this down as best we can here, and I'm going to quickly say just before I start, this video isn't made to like attack anyone or make anyone feel bad or say that you're not playing the game properly or whatever. I say it on my Twitch all the time, and I'll say it here. You've spent your money, you've bought that game, you play that game in whatever way you see fit. For me personally, I think it's just more fun if it's like played, not saying the way it's intended, but like in a way that's fun for both sides. And that's how I feel on Survivor and Killer. Like I don't go out my way to try and or do things that I know is unfun for other people, because I know when I come up against it, it's incredibly frustrating. That's just my viewpoint on the game. I'm not saying there's like there'll be times where I'll refer to the play as like RC or whatever. It's not an attack on anyone. It's not saying anyone's. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. Basically, it's just want to clear that out straight out the bat. And secondly, I'm just going to say that I'm going to clarify these two types as good and bad gameplay. And I'm not saying that bad gameplay is like bad, naughty you, slap on the wrist. It's just a quick way for me to kind of signpost and jump between the two topics without you guys getting confused. So I know bad has bad connotations to it, but I don't want to overcomplicate it by what terms I'm putting on it. It's just so it's easy to differentiate what I'm talking about. So first of all, when I say a good playstyle, I mean just like playing the game with its intended mechanics and playing it in a way that's fun for both sides. So using the killer's power, actively engaging survivors regularly. So when you hook someone, you're actively engaging in the next chase rather than standing around the hook and waiting people to come to you. Like having multiple chases, like trying to get pressure by downing multiple survivors. Or if someone's on a hook, you're trying to get that second down so that you're kind of forcing people off objectives and making them kind of think and play in a more challenging way. Like playing with your mind games during chase and it tiles and things like that. So that's like kind of what I mean by good gameplay. And bad gameplay is the stuff that everyone is probably well aware of, the hardcore tunneling, the hard face camping or proxy camping. I'm even going to throw ping ponging in there, because I think as ping ponging has become more kind of well known across the DBD community, people are now starting to play that in a similar way, which is incredibly unfun, where they're mixing aspects of the camp and tunnel into the ping ponging tactic. So like the idea of ping pong in itself isn't bad, but if you're then actively avoiding people who it's easier to hit to make sure that you're getting somebody who you've already hooked before, kind of brings it into that fold a little bit for me. So that's what I mean by the two different playstyles. So, and easiest way I could think to do this is that I've got two examples on the screen. So these are two games from one of my Twitch VODs from a few weeks ago. The game on the left was a game against someone who played the bad playstyle, which would be it was against a Huntress who got a 4K via 6 hooks. The first person, who is at the bottom, got hardcore tunneled, like hook. Straight out the game within 3 minutes of the game starting. The second person went down trying to get the person off their second hook, and and then that's basically what happened. The person above that got down trying to save the third person, and then I got down trying to save the second person. This all happened around basement, so we had hardcore tunneling for the first person, and then proxy camping of basement for the rest of the game, basically. So they didn't basically never let it was in Mother's Dwelling, and you know where the basement is in the central house bit. They never left the central house after they got their first hook. They stayed at that central house, and they didn't have to because they just downed people one after the other as they went to go and unhook other people. There was never coming out into the map to engage in chases. The first and second person, being me and the other player, never lost a health state or even heard a terror radius until we had to go and try and make save. So that was the first game. The second game was a trickster game on Larry's. It was a 9-hook game that ended in a 3k, where the only person I think who went on back-to-back hooks was myself, and that was my fault. I came straight off a hook and went to try and greed and commit to a generator that was almost done. The killer came back to the vicinity. I was the only person around. I was injured. I do not blame them for downing me and put me back on the hook, because I wouldn't expect them to just walk away and leave me because I just came off a hook. That would have been dumb. But no one else went back-to-back hooks. The kind of middle two did die on second hook, but that was because the hooks came kind of later in the game during the end game collapse. And I was on my way to unhook one of them when I got found by the trickster, and I get chased basically out of the exit door. There was a multitude of chases. There was a multitude of saving people, getting heals off, getting all the gens were obviously completed. And the key thing I want to highlight here is the points tally for the two games. So you have one person who played what you might call in the bad/negative way, which was really unfun for everyone in the game, and the game only lasted maybe 5 minutes max if you're lucky. Got 24,000 blood points. The second game that went for over 15 minutes, and the killer got multiple health states, chases, and 9 hooks, only got 22,000 blood points, and that's primarily because of people managed to escape chases, people got heals off, got unhooks, and blah 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 blah. But so basically, the person on the left got rewarded with more blood points than the person who played the game with the intended mechanics, and I think that's where the core problem of this lies, is there is nothing to stop you, nothing to de-incentivize you from playing that way, and you are in theory going to be rewarded for it. So that person has got more blood points than that trickster for playing in a way that's objectively worse than that trickster. And then that has downstream implications, which I'll quickly cover off now, and then kind of circle back to it being behaviour and Dead by Daylight's responsibility. So the downstream implications is that it's unfair for survivors, and that's going to do one or two things to either new players or experienced players. If you get 2 or 3 of those games in a row, you just put the controller or you step away from your computer, because it's just, I'm not going to play like that. Like if you get that, it's some of the most infuriating things that you can get. I'm very much like, okay, the last trial's behind me, I'll just go into the next one, and I just want to have fun. But it's incredibly difficult when you get multiple of those games back to back to back, and you're not being outskilled, you're not being outplayed, you're not being kind of outclassed by a better person. It's just somebody employing poor tactics to achieve a good outcome, and that makes, and especially if you're a new player and you've only just started playing the game, and say I've just picked up for the first time and I got to play that, and my first 5 games are against killers like that Huntress, I just won't pick the controller back up. Why would I go back to that game? All that happens is I just get tunneled and camped off hook, and that's unfortunately going to be the state of the way things go for new players, especially when you bring a big license chapter like Resident Evil. A lot of those new players will go into games and people will be playing in that way, and they'll just be like, right, well, this game isn't for me. And then the second downstream impact is these killers will continue to pip and get high blood points and go up the rankings, and then when they get to like red rank, for example, when they're going up against experienced and good survivors or better survivors, they'll just get embarrassed, and then that's when they go onto Twitter and the forums and talk about how survivors are OP, Swifts are OP, nerf all these perks. I went from consistently getting 4Ks and now I don't get anything, and the reason that is because they never take the time to learn the killers. They never play the game in the intended way and learn the subtle way of how to play killer. So when they come up against good survivors, they just get dumpstered, and then it's the game's fault. It's not their fault for playing in that way for so long that they can't play the game normally. It's the game's fault for not being fair, which isn't the case. If you just use the lower ranks for what they're intended for learning killers and learning how to play killer, then by the time you get to red rank, you should be in a position where you can at least compete whereas these people aren't, because they don't play the game in a conventional way. The most amount of chases and things like that they'll do is they'll get early downs and then just sit on it. You know what I mean? They'll never learn how to use Huntress's hatchets properly, or Nemesis's tentacles, or Nurse's blinks, because they'll rely on the playstyle of tunneling and camping. So the one thing I will say about it is that I do think there are times where it is valid to do so. And an example of that, as I would say, is like if you're in a game, there's 4 survivors alive, there's 1 gen remaining, someone's on a hook, and the game's snowballing away from you. I would not see a problem with someone going, Ricky, that person off hook, I need to get someone out of this game quickly to try and get any sort of foothold back in the game. Or, for example, if you know that you've got 2 people hooked in close proximity, and it's the same thing, 4 people are alive and you've got 1 gen left, you've got 2 people hooked. If going away from that hook can then lead to both people getting unhooked and healed and then straight back to it and can get out, like, there's nothing wrong with, I would say, in that thing, proxy camping between the 2 hooks until you can engage in another chase, and then once you get that chase, then leaving the hooks. So there are times when these tactics can be employed without making it ridiculously unfun for the other side, but it comes back to that thing from behaviour in Dead by Daylight, is there needs to be some sort of punishment or ramification for playing in that way. So if you do it once as a tactic to try and get your foothold back in the game, then you know, and you're taking that responsibility, and you're going to understand that you're going to be punished for it. But that will be worth you weighing up in the time, is, do I take that punishment to try and get back into the game, or do I just go play the game as it's meant to be intended? And it will, and the point of why the punishment and the de-incentivization for people to play that way is so that you stop having games like that game on the left, where you're basically guaranteeing every survivor is going to de-pip, you're playing in a completely unfun way, and you're deterring new players. I don't know how you would do it. I don't think it's enough to just tell people that they'll lose blood points, because I don't think people care, as long as they get their, in inverted commas, win from their 4K. I don't think that they'll care. But yeah, I think it's one of those ones. It's like I think there needs to be something done, because the longer it continues to go that way, I think just the more it's gonna, and especially when you've got newer players coming in, if that's what they're coming in and seeing on a regular basis, then that's the way they're going to play, if you know what I mean, and that's going to promote more of this kind of gameplay across the board. And I just can't see how that's good for the game at all. So guys, that's the discussion and the books for this week. It was a bit of a longer one because there's a lot of things to talk about and cover. I think it's quite clear. I don't think those playstyles are good for the game. I think the tactics can be used in times of need, but I don't think that should be your objective straight out the gate. Again, that is, as I said at the start of the description, that is just my opinion. I am not shaming anyone or saying anything bad about people who play in that way. I just think that it's unfun for people to play in that way for the other side, and it's going to negatively impact you in the longer haul if you do play that way. And again, people are going to play that way because there's nothing to deter them. They'll be rewarded for it in terms of blood points and pips and things like that. So they're like, I don't blame people for playing that way. The game doesn't do anything to stop you, and the game doesn't do anything to decentivize you from playing that way. So I think until the game brings something in that makes that punishable or negative or like will cost you something during the game, I think it will just continue to happen, and I think it will continue to grow and be a more relevant or prevalent part of the gameplay, which is not, I think, anything that anyone wants. But yeah, that's another discussion in the books, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I've been LiboATM, and please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, please come follow me over and watch me in Twitch, where I stream a couple of times a week at twitch.tv/LiboATM. And until I see you guys next time, peace.